The rain had a strange way of falling that night, slanted, sharp, almost angry, as if the sky itself was trying to warn the city that something was terribly wrong. Streetlights flickered in the darkness, their glow trembling over cracked sidewalks and trash-clogged gutters, and in the middle of that trembling glow stood a boy, thin, soaked, shaking, his hands hovering in the air as if he wasn't sure whether to reach forward or run. His name was Darius Moore, 16, too young to look so tired, too young to carry the weight he carried. Before him, an SUV lay on its side, wheels still turning weakly like a wounded animal. Smoke hissed from under the hood. The metal frame whined as it settled deeper into the ditch. Something smelled burnt, plastic, rubber, maybe even blood. Then, a groan, a low, broken groan. Darius froze, the kind of freeze that comes when your body wants to save itself but your heart won't let you leave somebody behind. A man, the driver, crawled out through the shattered window. He was older, white, maybe in his late 60s. His hair clung wetly to his forehead, blood traced a thin, wandering line down his temple, and though the man's suit jacket was torn and muddy, something about him looked important, not rich, exactly, not powerful, either, just significant, like he wasn't someone who should have been alone out here. The man lifted his head and blinked at Darius as if trying to place where he was, who he was, or what had just happened. "Help," he whispered, voice trembling with pain and fear. "Please, don't leave me." Darius swallowed hard. Wind blew rain into his eyes, making them sting, but he didn't blink. He wanted to run. Oh God, he wanted to run, because he knew what it looked like, a black boy at the scene of a wrecked car with an injured white stranger. And the truth was, it didn't matter what really happened, didn't matter that he'd been trying to help, didn't matter that he had nothing to do with the crash. People like him didn't get the benefit of the doubt in places like this, not at night. Not in the rain, not with sirens screaming down the block. The man's fingers clamped weakly around Darius's wrist. His touch was desperate, human, terrified. "Please," he repeated, voice breaking. And for a moment, just a moment, the whole world held still, but the sirens didn't stop. They grew louder, angrier, closer. Darius's heart punched against his ribs. He wasn't doing anything wrong. He hadn't touched the car. He didn't even know this man. But the blue and red lights were reflecting off puddles now, dancing across his shaking hands like warning signs. The man coughed violently, his body folding in on itself, his knees buckled. Darius lunged forward instinctively, catching him before he hit the ground. Rain splashed across both of them. "Stay with me." Darius shouted over the storm. "I'm not leaving you. I got you." The man looked up, eyes glassy but grateful, and then something strange flickered behind them. Recognition? Urgency? A secret? Before Darius could ask, the first police cruiser screeched around the corner, tires spraying water, doors already flinging open. "Freeze." Darius's stomach twisted, his muscles locked, his hands hovered uselessly in the air as the man collapsed against his chest. Another cruiser slid into position behind the first. Another. 3 sets of headlights burned through the rain. 3 sets of officers jumped out. Guns pointed at him. At the boy who was trying to help. Darius's breath caught. Something was wrong, very, very wrong, and he didn't know it yet. Not fully, not clearly, but this moment, this rainy, terrifying, impossible moment, was only the final chapter of something that had begun earlier that evening, something he never asked for, something he never saw coming, something that would turn his life upside down, because the truth was simple. He had no idea who the man in his arms really was, and what came next would shake the entire state. Long before the wrecked car, long before the sirens, long before the moment that would stitch his name into headlines he never asked for, Darius Moore was just a boy trying to breathe in a world that made breathing expensive. He lived on the 4th floor of a tired brick apartment building off Joseph E. Boone Boulevard, one of those buildings that leaned slightly to the left, like even the architecture was exhausted, the kind of place where neighbors left their doors cracked open in the summer because the AC had died years ago and nobody had the money to resurrect it, where the stairwell always carried the echo of someone cooking something soulful, peppery collard greens, lemon pepper wings, sweet cornbread, or fried catfish sizzling in oil like it was whispering secrets. That building had character, but it also had cracks, in the walls, in the hallways, in the lives inside it. Darius lived there with his mama, Yvette, and his little sister, Zoe, 8 years old with a smile bright enough to shame the sun. When Darius came home after school, Zoe always ran to him first, arms flung wide, eyes sparkling like she believed her big brother was made of magic. He wished he was, but even magic had limits in their world. Most nights, Yvette came home around midnight from her double CNA shift, walking in with her feet swollen, Her scrub smelling faintly of antiseptic and lavender lotion, she rubbed over her hands to hide the hospital scent. She tried to smile. She really did. But exhaustion sat on her shoulders like a heavy winter coat nobody gave her permission to take off. Still, she spoke softly, hugged her kids tightly, and prayed quietly, for strength, for rent, for safety, for a tomorrow slightly better than yesterday. Darius heard those prayers through the thin walls. He also heard the moment she cried into her pillow. Muffling the sound so the kids wouldn't wake up, he pretended he didn't hear. She pretended she wasn't breaking. They both pretended for Zuri, but pretending didn't stop the rent notices. They arrived like clockwork, bright red warnings tucked under the door, fluttering on the welcome mat like angry birds. Each one reminded them that they were behind again, that the landlord was being patient, that patience had an expiration date. And Darius felt it, felt the weight of every overdue dollar, every job he wasn't old enough to legally take, every shift he begged for at the little soul food spot on the corner where he worked washing dishes and bussing tables. Miss Nettie, the owner, loved him like a nephew, but even she could only give him a few hours here and there. Folks in the neighborhood needed jobs too. Money didn't stretch, no matter how hard you pulled it. On the nights he wasn't working, he sat cross-legged on the worn carpet of their living room, pencil pressed against cheap notebook paper, drawing mechanical shapes that filled entire pages, gears, pulleys, robotic arms, engines he could see so clearly in his mind that they felt alive, blueprints of a future he didn't yet know how to reach. He wanted to be an engineer. He wanted to build things that could help, things that lasted, things that didn't crumble the moment life leaned on them a little too hard. But sometimes, dreams felt like a luxury, like a dessert he wasn't allowed to order. Especially on the nights when his mama's voice cracked as she whispered into the phone with the utility company, begging them for just one more week before shutting the lights off. Those nights, Darius would close his drawing slowly, like tucking a hope back into a box. There were other things about him too, things that made him human, imperfect, painfully real. He hated confrontation. It wasn't fear of fighting. It was fear of what came after, fear of police, fear of misunderstandings, fear he had learned early. When he was 6 years old, police raided their building looking for a man who didn't even live there anymore. The door across the hall got torn off its hinges, the shouting, the boots in the hallway, the crying. Those sounds carved their names into Darius's memory. He remembered clutching a toy car so tight the wheels snapped off. He remembered his mama's body covering his and Zara's like a shield. Ever since then, his hand shook whenever he saw flashing blue lights. Even now, a decade later, he could still feel that tremor deep in his bones. At school, Darius tried hard, harder than most people realized, but effort didn't shield him from prejudice. When he aced a math test, his teacher, Mr. Keller, didn't congratulate him. Instead, he leaned over the desk, narrowed his eyes, and said, "You want to tell me who you copied from? Kids from this neighborhood don't usually get scores like this." "Kids like you," he meant. Darius stared at the paper in silence, throat tight, jaw clenched. He didn't argue. He didn't shout. He just folded the test gently, slid it into his backpack, and walked out of the classroom. Later, in the hallway, he pressed his head lightly against his locker, taking slow breaths until the burn in his chest faded. It didn't fade completely. Things rarely did. Still, every morning he woke up, tied his shoes, combed his hair neat, and promised himself today would be better. And on most days, that promise lasted. Until he walked out the door, on the block lived a group of older teens, boys who liked to puff their chests, laugh too loud, and make younger kids feel small. They weren't bad people. Not really. They were just tired too, but tiredness could turn into resentment, and resentment into danger. They called out to Darius sometimes, "Yo, lil man, skip that job of yours and come roll with us. Come on, D, you smart, could make real money with us." He always shook his head, kept walking. He didn't want trouble, didn't want shortcuts, didn't want to belong to anything that could swallow him whole. But whenever he refused, they'd exchange looks, the kind of looks that promised consequences someday. And though Darius walked straight and steady, inside his stomach tightened like a fist, yet there was still something steady inside him, something quiet but unbreakable. A kindness so natural it felt like a reflex, a softness he didn't announce but never hid. It showed when he walked Zara to school, holding her hand even if his friends were watching. It showed when he gave his mama the last $5 he earned, pretending he forgot to take lunch money so she wouldn't feel guilty. It showed when he stayed after school to help older neighbors carry groceries, even if it meant getting home late and eating leftovers cold. It showed simply because that was who he was. But kindness in a hard world often led you to crossroads you didn't expect. And on one particular evening, the evening that changed everything, kindness led him to someone who did not belong in his neighborhood. Someone lost, someone anxious, someone whose life was stitched with secrets Darius couldn't possibly imagine. Someone who would turn his entire world upside down. Someone he only knew as Tom. And what happened right after they met? No one in the neighborhood could have predicted. Not even Darius. Not even Tom. Not even the state of Georgia itself. The evening it all began didn't feel special at first. Just another humid Atlanta sunset sliding down the skyline. Just another day ending with the taste of exhaustion on Darius's tongue. He had taken the long way home after work, headphones dangling from his neck, the scent of fried okra and lemon pepper still clinging to his clothes. Miss Nettie had slipped him a plate of leftovers, catfish, mac, and cheese, and a warm roll wrapped in foil for that brain of yours, she'd said. Darius appreciated the gesture more than he let on. It was dinner for all three of them tonight. As he crossed the parking lot, he could already see the apartment building's flickering hallway light, the one that buzzed like a tired wasp every night. He thought about his sketches waiting on the living room floor, thought about how he'd draw until his mom got home. Maybe he'd make something cool for Zari. She liked when he drew robots with heart-shaped buttons. But halfway up the block, he saw his mama through the cracked blinds of their apartment, phone pressed to her ear, her free hand massaging her forehead. She was pacing, and even from the street he could tell, this wasn't good news. Something twisted in his chest. He slowed his steps. He didn't want to walk in on another night of whispered stress. Not yet. Not until he figured out how to keep the lights on or the rent paid. Not until he had something more to offer than hope. So he kept walking, past the building, down the sidewalk, past the kids jumping rope and the older men slapping dominoes on the table outside the corner store, past the woman selling peach cobbler cups from a cooler for a few extra dollars, past all the familiar sights that normally eased him. He walked until the neighborhood grew quieter, the laughter fading behind him, and that's when he saw the headlights. A car, a nice one, too, rolled slowly down the street, stopping and starting in an unsure rhythm. The windows were tinted. The rims were shiny enough to catch the last scraps of sunlight, definitely not from around here. Cars like that didn't cruise these blocks unless they wanted trouble or were lost enough to find it accidentally. Darius frowned. Nah, he muttered. Don't tell me this dude wandered in here on purpose. As if answering him, the car jerked to a stop, the driver's door opened, and an older white man stepped out. He turned in a slow circle, looking confused, checking his phone, turning it in his hand like it was malfunctioning. He looked painfully out of place, his clean shirt damp with sweat, his glasses sliding down his nose, his shoes far too nice for these cracked sidewalks. Darius sighed. This block wasn't dangerous every day, but on the wrong evening, at the wrong hour, with the wrong people watching, a man like that might not make it out untouched. Still, he kept his distance. It wasn't his business, until he noticed the group. 3 older teens leaning against a brick wall near the laundromat. Darius recognized them instantly. They recognized him too, eyes narrowing with a slow grin that carried all the wrong intentions. They weren't bad souls. Life had just cornered them enough times that they grew sharp edges. But those edges could cut, and they were staring at the lost man like he was a wallet on legs. One of them, Terran, nudged his friend. "You'll see that? Man looked like he ain't missed a meal since the 90s. The man still hadn't noticed them. He was too busy tapping his phone, trying to reconnect to GPS. Terran stepped forward a few inches. The second teen chuckled. Bet his pocket's heavy. Darius's stomach nodded. He told himself not to get involved. Not tonight. Not when life was already too heavy. Not when one wrong move could land him on the wrong side of somebody's anger, or worse, somebody's badge. But as he watched the man take another confused step forward, watched Terran and the others exchange that silent signal, the one that meant they were seconds from action, Darius's feet moved before his brain made a decision. He stepped forward. "Yo," he called out, voice louder than he intended. "You lost." The man startled so hard he almost dropped his phone. The boys near the wall paused, annoyance flickering across their faces. Terran folded his arms. "Brew, what you doing?" Darius ignored him and walked toward the man. The stranger blinked behind wet glasses. Yes, I think so. My GPS stopped working and I was trying to get back to Peachtree Street, but He looked around, clearly realizing he'd made a mistake. "This isn't it, is it?" Darius exhaled. "Not even close." The man forced a shaky laugh. "I was afraid of that." Behind them, Terran raised his eyebrows. "Darius, my guy, we talking to this man now?" His tone held that dangerous mix of teasing and warning. The stranger glanced uneasily between them. Darius stood a little straighter. "Let me help you," he said quietly. Terran scoffed. "Help him with what? He got money for all of us? If not, why are you wasting your time?" The man paled. Darius shot Terran a look, not aggressive, but firm, steady, the kind of look that reminded him Darius wasn't scared. He never had been. He just avoided trouble because trouble hit harder when you were poor, when you were black, when you didn't have shields to hide behind. Terran clicked his tongue. Whatever, man, do what you want. He stepped back, but the tension didn't leave, not from the street, not from Darius's spine. The stranger swallowed. Thank you, I'm Tom. Darius, he replied. Come on, your car ain't safe on this strip, let's walk it out. As they headed down the block together, the stranger kept darting glances around, taking in the cracked sidewalks, the bars on the storefronts, the murals fading under years of sunlight. This neighborhood, it's, Tom began. Real, Darius finished. It's real, good people, hard lives. Tom nodded slowly. I see. But his voice carried something else, something heavier. Darius didn't know that Tom wasn't just observing. He was studying, processing, comparing everything to things he knew but wasn't saying yet. They walked for a while. Just a boy and an older man whose worlds should never have collided. Thank you for helping me, Tom said quietly. Most kids your age wouldn't, Darius shrugged. Most grown folks wouldn't help me either, worlds weird like that. Tom gave him a long look, one that lingered with curiosity. Before he could respond, a bottle shattered somewhere behind them. Both turned fast. 3 men were stepping out of the shadows near an alley. One holding a broken bottle, another gripping something under his jacket, the third smiling with the slow, dangerous confidence of someone who'd done this before. Darius's pulse lurched. Tom whispered, Are they? Yeah, Darius said under his breath. Don't look at them, just walk. They walked. The men followed. Tom's breath hitched. Should I call the police? Darius's voice came out sharper than he intended. No, trust me, no cops, just keep walking. Tom didn't understand why. He didn't understand a lot of things. Not yet, but he would. And what happened next would be the first domino in a chain that no one, not even the governor himself, saw coming. Tom's footsteps grew uneven as he walked beside Darius, quick, nervous, tapping the pavement like he was trying not to run. The 3 men behind them didn't hurry. They moved slow, deliberate, relaxed in the way predators get when they know their meal has nowhere to go. Darius's jaw tightened. He wasn't a fighter, never had been, but he'd grown up understanding danger the way kids in better neighborhoods understood swimming lessons, early, painfully, and by necessity. Turn at the corner, Darius murmured. Don't break pace. Tom nodded, but the tremor in his breathing betrayed him. They turned. The streetlights here flickered sluggishly, casting long shadows that stretched across the cracked pavement like hands reaching for their ankles. Darius, Tom whispered. I think I know what they're doing, Darius replied. Just keep your head forward. But inside he felt 12 again. Small, scared, powerless. He could still hear the echo of boots stomping down his hallway during the old police raid, still feel the trembling in his fingers whenever danger crept too close. A sudden clatter made them both jump, a trash can tipping over behind them. The men were getting closer. Closer. Too close. Tom swallowed. Maybe I should just give them my wallet. No, Darius hissed. You don't ever hand over your fear. They'll take more than your wallet. But what do we? Just then, a familiar voice barked from across the street. Yo, D. Darius flinched. It was Terran, the neighborhood troublemaker from earlier, leaning against a rusted mailbox with his boys. His tone was bold, but his eyes held something unreadable. Why are you walking round here with Mr. Peachtree? Terran called. You trying to get jumped? Tom stiffened. Jumped. Before Darius could answer, the 3 men behind them slowed, hesitating as they recognized Terran's group. A silent, territorial exchange passed between the 2 groups, an unspoken line drawn. Darius grabbed Tom's sleeve. Over here, he said quickly. Terran waved them across the street. Move, bro. You'll look like bait. Darius and Tom hurried over. The threatening trio in the shadows glared but retreated, slipping down the alley like smoke dissolving into darker smoke. Tom exhaled shakily. Oh, God. Terran eyed Tom up and down. Man, what you doing out here dressed like somebody's tax refund? You tryna get snatched? Tom forced a weak smile. I got lost, Terran smirked. Yeah, I bet. Then he looked at Darius, but the expression had changed. The mockery was gone. Underneath it was something else, concern. D, you stupid for real, Terran said softly. You can't just walk around here protecting folks who ain't from here. You can get yourself hurt. Darius didn't respond. He didn't need to. Terran sighed and shook his head. All right, you're good now, but don't let me see you walking this man around again. Darius nodded. Thanks. Terran shrugged like he didn't care, but his voice cracked when he replied. Man, whatever, get home. As they walked away, Tom turned to Darius with wide, bewildered eyes. He protected us. Darius snorted softly. He clown a lot, but he got a heart. Folks round here don't let outsiders get eaten alive unless they ask for it. Tom absorbed that. His expression changed. Softer, heavier. They walked in silence for a moment, the night settling around them like a weighted blanket. Tom finally spoke. You have a good heart, Darius. You didn't have to help me. Darius stuffed his hands into his pockets. You didn't have to trust me. Tom let out a small, almost broken laugh. I felt safer with you than I would have with a whole squad of security. He didn't realize how strange that sounded. Not yet. But Darius filed it away in the back of his mind, because nothing about this man made perfect sense. They reached Tom's car, a sleek, rented SUV now smeared with dust, humidity, and stray fingerprints. Tom let out a relieved breath. But as he touched the door handle, he froze. The back window was smashed in. Glass glittered on the pavement like ice. Tom's briefcase was gone. His laptop bag, gone. His jacket, gone. Darius's heart sank. Oh man. Tom pressed a trembling hand to his forehead. No, 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 this is bad, this is. He stopped, his face a drain of color, not the annoyed kind of pale someone gets when their stuff is stolen. This was deeper, urgent, terrified. Tom? Darius asked, You okay? Tom closed his eyes. But when he opened them, something haunted lived there. I need to get somewhere safe, he whispered. Right now, Darius frowned. Why? It's just a break-in, happens all the time. Tom shook his head violently. No, you don't understand. His voice was trembling. Those documents, those files, people would do anything to get them. Darius frowned harder. What files? Tom stared at him for a long moment. It looked like he was deciding whether to tell the truth, whether to trust a boy he'd known less than an hour. He opened his mouth, but just then, a pair of bright headlights swung around the corner, fast. Blinding, the engine roared like a warning. Tom's face went white. Darius didn't know why. Not yet, but he was about to. Because what happened next stunned both of them. The headlights slammed into the night like a punch. A massive black truck barreled down the street, engine growling low, predatory, a sound that didn't belong anywhere near this neighborhood unless something terrible was coming with it. Tom stumbled backward, his breath hitched. His eyes widened with pure, unfiltered fear. Fear so sharp it sliced through the humid air. Darius, he whispered, get behind me. The request made no sense. Tom was older, slower, shaking. Darius was young, quick, and alert. If anything, he should have been protecting Tom. But Tom wasn't thinking about logic. He was thinking about survival. Why? Darius asked, voice thin. Tom didn't answer. He couldn't. His body locked up as if his mind had just realized something horrifying. Something that had nothing to do with the broken window or the stolen briefcase, and everything to do with who he was and what he carried. The truck slowed, then rolled to a stop right behind Tom's SUV. The engine didn't cut off. The rumble vibrated through the street, through the pavement, through Darius's ribs. Even the streetlights seemed to flicker under its weight. The passenger door opened. A tall figure stepped out. Dark hoodie, gloved hands, face hidden in the shadows. Darius's pulse thundered. Tom, he whispered. We should go. But Tom didn't move. He was frozen. Not with confusion this time, but with certainty. Like he knew exactly who that person was, and why they were here. The hooded figure took one slow step forward, then another. Only 4 feet separated them now. Hand it over, the figure said, voice muffled but sharp. Where is it? Tom shook his head. I don't have it. You already took the briefcase. That wasn't all of it, the figure replied coldly. Where's the rest? Darius's eyes darted between them. What was happening? Who were these people? What did Tom have that strangers would roll into a poor neighborhood at night to steal? Tom stepped protectively in front of Darius. Just a sliver, just enough to shield him. I don't have it, he repeated. Darius saw his hand trembling. The figure exhaled in annoyance and reached inside his jacket. Darius's whole body tensed. No, Tom whispered. No, don't, there's a child here. The figure paused momentarily, then continued anyway. That was the moment Darius understood. This wasn't a robbery. This was something worse. Something organized. Something dangerous. He grabbed Tom's arm. Run. But the street was boxed in. Behind them, the truck. In front, a narrow sidewalk bordered by steel fences and boarded-up shops. To the left, the cracked pavement where the hooded figure approached. To the right, a brick wall too high to climb. Tom's breath came out in short, panic pulses. "I'm so sorry, Darius," he whispered. "You should have never been part of this." The hooded figure pulled something from his jacket, a glint of metal. Darius flinched, but Tom pushed him hard toward the pavement. "Go!" The figure lunged forward with sudden force. Darius stumbled but didn't fall. He darted toward the other side of the SUV, heart hammering. The figure redirected, stepping toward where Tom had moved. Tom backed away with his hands raised. "There's nothing left." "Stop!" The figure didn't stop. Darius looked around wildly, searching for anything. A rock, a bottle, a broken piece of metal, anything he could use. But his hand closed around nothing, and that's when he saw the opening. Tom's SUV, keys still dangling from the ignition. "Tom!" Darius shouted, "The car, get in!" Tom looked. For a second, hope flashed across his face. Then the figure lunged. Tom dove into the SUV, slamming the door shut. Darius sprinted around the other side, yanked the passenger door open, and threw himself inside just as the hooded figure reached the window. "Go!" Darius yelled. Tom turned the key. The engine coughed, stuttered, then roared to life. Tom shoved the gearshift forward, tires screeching as the SUV shot into the street. For a moment, Darius thought they were safe. For one split second, he believed they'd outrun whatever Tom had been terrified of. But the truck's engine thundered behind them, and when Darius twisted in his seat, the truck was coming, fast. Too fast. "Tom." "I see it." They swerved around a corner, tires squealing against wet pavement. Rain hit the windshield in angry streaks as the SUV fishtailed. Tom gripped the wheel so hard his knuckles turned white. The truck stayed close, closer, right on their tail. "Why are they following us?" Darius cried. Tom didn't answer. He couldn't. His silence was the loudest answer of all. The SUV skidded around another corner, hydroplaning briefly before Tom regained control. The truck smashed puddles behind them, gaining speed. One more turn, one single wrong turn, and they'd be pinned. "Darius," Tom choked out, "if anything happens." "Stop. Don't say that." The truck hit their bumper. Hard, the SUV lurched. Darius slammed into the dashboard, stars exploding behind his eyes. Tom shouted something Darius couldn't hear. The world blurred into rain, streetlights, and terror. Another hit. The SUV spun. The world tilted sideways. Airbags exploded. Glass shattered. Metal screamed. Darius felt his body lift, then crash against something unyielding. Then darkness swallowed everything. For a moment, there was no sound. No pain, no breath. Then, a groan. Darius's own. He forced his eyes open. The SUV was sideways in a ditch, steam rising from the mangled hood. Rain poured in through the broken windows. Tom hung sideways in his seatbelt, dazed, bleeding. Darius crawled toward him. Tom, stay awake." Tom's eyes flooded. "Don't leave me," he whispered. Darius's heart fractured. He pulled him out, dragged him away from the wreck, into the pouring rain, onto the wet pavement. But before he could catch his breath, sirens. Loud, close, aggressive, and when they turned the corner, everything inside Darius collapsed. Police. 3 cars, lights blazing, guns already drawn, guns pointed at him. At the black boy standing over an injured white man in the rain. Freeze. Darius's world tilted. His hand shook. His throat closed. He wasn't doing anything wrong. He hadn't done anything wrong, but none of that mattered now. Not with those sirens, not with those guns, not with that man's blood on his clothes. He lifted his trembling hands into the air. "Please," he whispered, voice cracking. "I didn't do this," but the officers didn't listen. They tackled him, hard. His cheek hit the cold pavement. Rain filled his mouth. Handcuffs snapped shut around his wrists. As they forced him into the back of the police car, he heard Tom trying, weakly, desperately, to speak. "Wait, stop." He helped, but the officers ignored him. They slammed the door. Darius's heart pounded against his ribs like it was trying to break free. Because he knew, deep down, this wasn't just arrest. This was the kind of moment his mother feared. The kind the neighborhood warned boys like him about. The kind that changed lives permanently. The car pulled away. Tom disappeared behind the rain-soaked glass. And Darius whispered to no one, "Please, somebody believe me." What he didn't know, what he couldn't know, was that the one man who could save him was the man he had just saved. And that truth was about to explode. The holding cell smelled like bleach, metal, and despair, an odor Darius knew too well from stories of boys who didn't make it home. The cold bench pressed into his back, the buzzing fluorescent lights flickered overhead, and the echo of distant shouting ricocheted through the walls like trapped ghosts. He sat hunched forward, cuffs digging into his wrists, heart hammering a rhythm that made it impossible to breathe. Every breath felt stolen, borrowed, fragile. He replayed everything in his head: the truck, the crash, Tom's blood. The officer's eyes, wide with suspicion the moment they saw his skin, not the situation, the cuffs. The shove, his face hitting the pavement. Tom trying to speak, Tom being ignored. And now, silence, just silence. A silence that scared him more than sirens. He tried to swallow, but his throat was sandpaper, his hands trembled uncontrollably. He could still hear his mother's voice in his head, soft, tired, begging him every night. "Baby, you be careful out there, please, I can't lose you." Tears burned behind his eyes. He blinked them away. He couldn't cry. Not here, not in front of these walls. Time stretched. Minutes turned into hours. No one came. No one asked him a single thing except, "Why'd you attack that man? Why'd you chase him? What were you trying to steal?" Every question knocked the breath out of him. "I didn't," he'd whispered. "I was helping him." "Please, just ask him." But the officers chuckled. "He's unconscious, kid, convenient, huh?" The words poisoned the air around him. He pressed his forehead against the cold bars. He thought of Zura's smile, his mama's tired hands, the sketches on the living room floor. He wondered if he'd ever see home again. Then footsteps echoed down the hallway. Heavy, urgent, more than one pair. Darius tensed. The officers at the desk stood up straighter than before. One tugged at his uniform nervously. Another whispered into a radio with hands that shook. "What's going on?" Darius murmured to himself. The footsteps grew louder, closer, almost thunderous now. Then the door to the holding area burst open. A flood of uniformed officers spilled in. But these ones weren't from the local precinct. Their badges looked different, sleeker, polished, serious. Behind them came men in suits, carrying clipboards and earpieces. The entire precinct changed temperature, like someone had opened a freezer door. "What is the meaning of this?" A stern voice barked. Darius jumped. Even the walls seemed to flinch. A cluster of officers parted down the middle, clearing a path, and then he walked in, Tom. But not the battered, frightened Tom Darius had pulled from the wreck. This Tom stood tall. Still bruised, yes, but cleaned up, dressed in a crisp shirt, an expensive coat draped over his shoulders. 2 security personnel flanked him, scanning the room like hawks. He looked transformed. He looked powerful. He looked angry. Darius's breath hitched. "Tom." Every officer in the room stiffened as the man entered. Their faces drained of color. The police chief rushed forward. "Governor Harper, sir, we didn't know you were," the words choked off. The room fell silent. "Governor." Darius's mind shattered into pieces. Tom Harper, the new governor of Georgia, elected just months ago. A man whose face was plastered across billboards, newspapers, morning talk shows. The man he'd walked through the neighborhood. The man he'd shielded from danger. The man he dragged out of a wrecked car. The man now staring straight at him. Governor Harper didn't speak at first. He just looked at Darius, really looked at him, with an expression that blended gratitude, guilt, and something fierce, something protective, something that changed the air in the room. Then he turned sharply toward the officers. "Why?" the governor said, voice low but seething. "Is the boy who saved my life sitting in a cell?" A wave of shock crashed through the precinct. The desk sergeant sputtered. "Yes, sir, we were told." "You were told what?" The governor snapped. That a 16-year-old unarmed boy attacked a grown man twice his size? That he somehow caused a high-speed crash while on foot? Do you hear how insane that sounds? The sergeant stammered. He matched a suspect description. "A suspect," the governor repeated in disbelief. "No, he is a hero, and he is the reason I am standing here alive." Every officer swallowed hard. The governor's voice sharpened. "Open the cell." No one moved. Then he thundered. "Now." Keys rattled. The heavy metal door swung open. Darius stood frozen, still cuffed. A young officer approached hesitantly and unlocked him. The cuffs fell to the ground with a metallic clatter. But Darius's legs didn't move. He didn't trust this moment. Didn't trust the floor under his feet. Didn't trust that this wasn't another trick of the world that always seemed ready to hurt boys like him. Governor Harper stepped forward. Slow, steady, eyes softening. He knelt down slightly so he could meet Darius's eyes. "You saved me. he said gently. I owe you my life. Darius's lips parted, but no sound came out. His body shook with the weight of everything. Fear, relief, confusion, exhaustion, disbelief. Governor Harper put a hand on his shoulder. I won't let them hurt you, he said quietly. Not anymore. Something inside Darius cracked, and before he could stop himself, a sob escaped. He covered his face with both hands, shoulders shaking. The governor didn't look away, didn't flinch, didn't let him cry alone. Instead, he placed a steady hand on Darius's back and said softly, You're safe now, but what happened next? Shook the entire building. One of the officers cleared his throat. Sir, those men who chased you, the ones who caused the crash, they're still out there. Governor Harper's jaw tightened. Find them, he said. Then he looked at Darius again, this time with a fire in his eyes Darius hadn't seen before. And when the truth comes out, the governor added, a whole lot of people are going to answer for what they did tonight. No one in the room dared breathe, because everyone could tell. Justice had just entered the chat. The ride from the precinct to Darius's neighborhood felt surreal, like he was floating outside his own life, watching it from above. 1 minute, he'd been shoved into a police car like a criminal. Now he was sitting in the backseat of a state vehicle, escorted by law enforcement who actually treated him like he mattered. But his hands still shook, his ribs still ached. His mind still replayed the cuffs, the crash, the accusations, the fear. Governor Harper sat beside him, speaking softly, trying to ease the weight pressing into Darius's chest. I'm so sorry, he kept saying. So sorry. Darius didn't know how to respond. What was the proper way to speak to the governor of Georgia? Especially one who looked like that, bruised, guilty, and furious all at once. When the car stopped outside the apartment building, neighbors emerged from porches and windows, murmuring in disbelief. Police cars, state vehicles, the governor stepping out with his arm gently guiding Darius forward. Phones came out, gasps filled the air. Miss Nettie from the soul food spot nearly fainted on her doorstep. Lord, Darius? Baby, what happened to you? Kids stared wide-eyed, adults whispered. Someone dropped their grocery bag and canned goods rolled down the steps. The world blurred, until one voice cut through the noise like a lightning strike. Darius. His mother. She burst out of the building still wearing her scrubs, the exhaustion on her face instantly replaced by raw terror. She pushed past the onlookers, running toward her son, hands trembling violently. She grabbed him, cupping his face, turning it side to side. My baby, what they do to you? Why you got bruises on your head? Why the police outside? What happened? Ma, I'm okay. No, you not, she cried. You shaking, Darius. Oh God, what happened to my child? Tears pulled in her eyes and spilled over. Governor Harper stepped forward. Mrs. Moore, he said softly, your son saved my life tonight. The entire courtyard fell silent. Her breath caught. What? I'm Governor Harper, he continued gently. Your son protected me when I was lost. He shielded me when armed men came after us. He pulled me from a wrecked vehicle, and when the police arrived, they misjudged the situation, but your son is a hero. She blinked, confusion and pain and disbelief fighting on her face. The governor? You the governor? Yes, and my son saved you. Yes, he said again, even softer. Mrs. Moore slowly turned to Darius, eyes trembling. Baby, why you didn't tell me? Darius swallowed hard. I didn't know who he was. She hugged him tight, her arms wrapping around him as though she feared he might disappear if she let go. He buried his face in her shoulder, inhaling the faint scent of lavender lotion and hospital corridors. Her sobs trembled through his bones. Behind them, neighbors murmured in awe, Darius Moore. That little boy saved the governor. No way. Man, I knew that kid was special. He always been good. Always. Governor Harper cleared his throat and addressed the gathering crowd. Everyone here should know this, he said. Darius didn't hesitate to help me tonight. He didn't ask who I was. He didn't ask what I could offer. He saw someone in trouble, and he stepped in. The governor looked around, his voice rising with quiet authority. And I saw things tonight, things that broke my heart, things no community should have to face. I saw poverty, desperation, violence, fear, and I saw a young man, your young man, who still chose kindness. People nodded, some wiped their eyes. But I also saw injustice, the governor continued, jaw tightening. And I promise you, every officer involved will face accountability. Every detail will be investigated. This ends tonight. A murmur of shock rippled through the crowd. Terran and his boys emerged from between buildings, their faces pale as they absorbed everything. The governor wasn't done, and more importantly, he said, turning back to Darius, I intend to make sure this young man, and others like him, have a future that matches their potential. Mrs. Moore's breath stopped mid-sob. Darius blinked. What you mean by that? She whispered. The governor smiled softly. I mean, he said, that I am establishing a scholarship fund in Darius's name for students from underserved neighborhoods who want to pursue engineering or any STEM field they dream of. The world froze. It was so quiet you could hear the hum of a streetlight. Darius's mouth fell open. Terran muttered, a scholarship? 4D. Little Zari, who had run down the steps without anyone noticing, tugged at Darius's sleeve. Bubba, you gonna be a robot maker for real? Darius felt tears forming again, but this time they weren't from fear. Governor Harper put a hand on Mrs. Moore's shoulder. And that's not all, he said. I was informed you're behind on rent. You won't be anymore. Consider it handled. Mrs. Moore covered her mouth with both hands. Her legs buckled, and she had to lean against the railing to keep from collapsing. Why are you doing all this? She whispered through tears. Governor Harper looked at Darius. Because your son did something for me, he said slowly. He showed me what leadership really means. Not political power, not status, not speeches. He gently squeezed Darius's shoulder. He showed me compassion, humanity, courage. He showed me the kind of person I want to be. Darius's breath shook. He'd never been praised like that in his life. Governor Harper straightened, addressing the entire courtyard. And let me make one more thing clear. Every head turned. The men who chased us will be found, and the officers who mistreated this boy will answer for it. No one should be punished for doing the right thing. A ripple of relief rolled through the block. People whispered blessings. Someone shouted, that's right. Miss Nettie yelled, God don't play about good kids. Even Terran stepped forward, rubbing the back of his neck awkwardly. Yo, Darius, he muttered, voice low enough only a few could hear. I ain't know you was going through all that. You always been solid, man, respect. It wasn't an apology, but it was close enough to one. And coming from Terran, it mattered. Darius exhaled shakily. For the first time that night, his chest felt lighter. The governor wasn't done yet.